Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. The opinions of the guest may not represent those of the host and the station. And I want to thank Jeannie White, station manager, for producing the show, writing the blog. Please read the blog. We'll have information where you could buy the book and about our guests. I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, for having this radio network station and giving people a chance to talk. Folks, pull up a chair because I want you to hear my guest. I am so excited and thrilled to have with me Joe Brazeal, who is the author of Living with Thunder, Alzheimer's Untold, A Family's Journey. Faith, hope, and love, but the greatest is love. Go on Amazon and read the great reviews. This book is the raw truth, and I admire Joe Brazeal for writing the truth because people need to hear the truth about this monster disease. And yes, I don't sugarcoat, and neither does Joe. And I want to welcome Joe Brazeal to Chatting with Betsy. Hi,
Thank
Joe.
you very much. What a delightful introduction. I was almost wondering who you were talking about.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on and going to discuss your book with me. I know that you and I have a lot in common. Your wife had early onset Alzheimer's. Your children were young when your wife was going through this, weren't they?
Yes, ma'am. When my children were young, they were, Carrie was about 12, Joseph was 10, and John was 5. So the book is really written as a love story, how it starts out, and it goes back to our days of courting and then getting married and the excitement of newlyweds, and then the children come along. Well, then 15 years into it, all of a sudden her mother started acting crazy. I mean, that's all I could say. It was insane. And then in the midst of this, my wife started to show bizarre behavior. And I was just kind of scratching my head wondering what is going on here. And that's how the book is written. And it goes from one, it takes you through there, and then it gives you help and anecdotes about things that you might want to use along your journey, because right now there's, nearly 6 million people just in the United States and 43 million around the world with this horrible, relentless, cruel disease. I call it a robbery in progress. And so what you're left with when it's all over is ashes, and this book is my gift back to the world, if you will. And it's the only way that I can explain it, because it's just too insane for anybody to possibly believe what all can happen when you take this journey. And the other thing I would add is that the children, I call it the children of the lost, because those are the ones that really get lost in the wake of this. I may be getting ahead of myself, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea. But there's a lot of good information about how to handle Social Security, Medicaid, lots of people every day. At least 200,000 people in the United States are going to walk into this early onset, and they're not going to have a clue. And so I wrote this to be timeless. So you could pick it up. It's not per se dated. It is, but you can take it at any point, at any time, and turn to a chapter and read it. And it's entertaining. It's got humor in it, but it also has the reality of this robbery in progress.
I like that you call it a robbery in progress, Joe, because I used to say to my husband, Matt, that when his mom had Alzheimer's, that it's a thief. It just keeps robbing and robbing, And I like to tell folks, because this is what gave me hope when Matt had early onset, was that the dementia, any dementia can rob the brain, but it doesn't rob the heart of love. And I just really, truly believe that they know that you love them. They may not remember who you are sometimes, but they know the love. They know your voice. They know your touch.
There's no doubt about it, because this is the way I look at it. When I stood before God and everybody on August 1st, 1987, and I told the world in front of like 200 witnesses in El Dorado, Arkansas, that I was going to marry this woman, this girl. She was 27, and I was 26. She's just a few months older than me. And that's what we're going to do, to death do us part. And the eyes are the window to the soul. So that's what I always held on to. Now, you have rough times, good times and bad times in marriage, but you would never expect this tsunami of whirlwind. That's all I can call it. And I don't know your experience, but in my experience, we saw the signs with her mother. So I go into detail. So for me, this is my belief. It's genetic. It could be hereditary or genetic. Stress, environmental, or I think it could be a combination. We don't know, what tomorrow holds, but we do know that there is proof that it can be brought on by genetics. Now, Kim's mother, I think, had a double whammy of it, because her mother was born in Murfreesboro, Arkansas. Now, the Murfreesboro is southwest Arkansas, and it's about an hour from Texarkana and about an hour from Little Rock. Anyway, that particular area is where they have the diamond mine, and that's where my wife got her name. She was named after Kimberly, Arkansas. And they've got the Kimberly mines in Africa, but in any event, her grandfather mined cinnabar for the war effort, and that story's in there. And so when her mother was little, she cleaned mercury barehanded with cheesecloths. They used the cinnabar or mercury in bombs to make the bombs go straight down. And they became the richest family, and then the war was over, they became the poorest family. They didn't have any social, net back then, back in the 40s. That's what it was. But what I'm trying to say is that fast forward this disease, now her grandparents also, or her grandfather had Alzheimer's because he was from Germany, and after, back in the 60s, he reverted back to German, and they had to hire an interpreter. But her mother ended up just getting it. We called it getting it. And about that time, Kimberly was real close to her mother, and she saw her mother just start losing it. We were living in Little Rock, and so she went down to see her mom, and while she was down, her mom, she got the whole family up at 3 o'clock in the morning, threw them out of the house. Crazy stuff like that. And other things that Kim was going through, she started having bad headaches. So you have a hereditary thing, and as far as her mother goes, I believe she ingested mercury in her body, and when Kim was born, she was their firstborn, so it went through the placenta, and I think that's where Kim got one of the reasons she got early onset, plus the stress that she went through, seeing her mother go through that, as well as she started to develop these headaches. And so she went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed this medicine to help her headaches. Well, that didn't do any good. So she started self-medicating she wasn't drinking heavy, a lot of alcohol or anything, just beer. And, it says on the warning label, do not drink beer and alcohol. And I always thought that was something to do with it. But I believe stress and genetics and alcohol have a lot to do with rushing forward the DNA markers. So if anybody thinks they might be, or their mind slipping, and there's so many antidotes that people will tell you. They'll say, take coconut oil or take this. I don't want to kind of get off the subject too far, but my point that I want to make is you got genetics, stress, and diet and exercise can help fend off some of it. But stress and then if you're self-medicating and using alcohol, I think that's just a deadly combination. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say about that.
Yes, and well, I have to say, when people are really reaching for straws, I call it, looking for hope, the level trying anything. I mean, I tried coconut oil with Matt. That didn't help. I tried this, so-called memory stuff before I even knew that he had early onset. It didn't help. So I think that, yes, my own personal belief is, if you're exposed to a lot of chemicals, I do believe that can, now this is just my opinion, folks, it could possibly change. Now, Matt, when he was tested, they did test him for like lead and arsenic and chemicals, and I forgot what else because it's 11 years ago. They did test him, and Matt's mom's whole side had Alzheimer's, but later in life. But Matt did work at a chemical company, and he would stink when he came home. Who knows what that did to him? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. We don't know about the air we breathe, the water we drink. Joe, I want to just let the audience know, because your spouse had early onset, my spouse had early onset. That brings in a whole different set of circumstances than someone later in life, because here you are in midlife. You could even be younger, and you're at the height of your earning power, and then you can't work. And then some people are young and they don't qualify for certain government programs.
Yeah, that's right. I talk.
Yeah, and the children are young, and so the children are also going through this, watching their parent or maybe grandparent, whoever they live with, going through that. And my son was 16 when we moved in with my mother-in-law, but Josh was probably 25 or 26 when his dad started it. And it's tough. It's tough on the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What aspect would you like me to talk on? Because that's why I wrote this book. I mean, I didn't really, what would I say? It's just something that honestly that I just felt what God was leading me to do. The main thing I would love for this to help is somebody out there, that the whole idea originally was going to be a Hitchhiker's Guide to Alzheimer's, because I want to take this book, and if I were to go back in time and talk to myself and say, all right, you're not going to know what is ahead of you, but read this book, because you're going to find out so many things by just reading this. For example, the main thing is, one of the things, that it's not a psychological disease. It's a physiological disease. It's like a car battery losing its voltage. Or the voltage is too high. It just goes haywire, and there's no regulator on the brain. The brain can be all over the place. Kim eventually had what I call daylight moments. And what I've learned is you have to live one moment at a time. You can't live tomorrow. You can't live next week. You can only live one moment at a time, and that's the main thing that will throw you down. I was so stressed out probably about 8 years into it that and you mentioned your career. I mean, I had to keep going, and there were no social programs, but I do talk in the book about how you can get Social Security. For example, when Kim got sick, she was mainly a stay-at-home mom, but she did get Social Security letters saying if you get disability, you'll get this amount per month. And so I used that documentation, and I fought the government, and I fought, and I fought, and I fought, and I fought. There's all kind of good information out there, but one of the things you need to realize, if you're early onset, is that the key thing is apply to Social Security, and you may make too much money to get SSI benefits, but what you want is the Medicaid benefits. Also, you want to get a revocable trust. That's very important. It changes from state to state. And if you are working and if you do have to move across state lines, just settle down and realize it's going to take you at least 6 months. It doesn't matter, 6 months to get through the process of Medicaid. So we moved from Mississippi to Indiana and from Indiana to Kansas. The disease didn't kill Kim. It was her behavior that did it. It was the cigarettes. Oh, my gosh. In 2008, she was diagnosed in August of 2008. You could see us coming because she had to have at least 30 packs of cigarettes in her purse, or she would bug you. You have my cigarettes? I really want my cigarettes. Where's my cigarettes? I don't have enough cigarettes. Joe, would you get me a cigarette? I really want a cigarette. Are you going to work today? Am I going to work today? Where do we live? Who are you? Where's John? Where's Joseph? Where's Carrie? Do you have my cigarettes? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's the same questions. I mean, I'm thankful my husband didn't smoke, but yeah, I mean, it could change. Yes. The ad, like, I say, keep a sense of humor. It might be dark and twisted, but gets you through. Like Matt would say.
Yep.
Right, like, Matt would say to Josh and I, Josh is our son, you're the best. The next minute it'd be cursing us out and we're no good and we're not helping him. Then it'd be, thank you for helping me. So what I like about your book, and I think people really need to get your book and to know like your story, but what could be expected. And about the different programs and about, what your children went through. Because, yes, everyone's story is different, but there's so many similarities that I think that's what is a common thread. That's why in support groups there's that common bond. Because even though we have different situations, they're very similar. And so you wrote the book, Joe, and it was, I'm sure, cathartic for you, and you wrote it so people would know what to expect on this journey. Why else did you write the book? What would you like the reader to take away from your book?
Never give up hope. And if you have children, I was told when we were living in Little Rock when she was diagnosed, I didn't know what to do. I did not want to get a divorce from her, but she had run up Dillard, Stage, all these credit cards without me knowing, like $30,000,
wow,
something like that. And I said, Kim, you can't keep doing this. I mean, I was having to go, honestly. I mean, I'm telling you, I had to tell the truth. I had to go to payday loans. And I had made a good salary. I was in the power utility business for 20 years. I have a degree in computer science. So also in the book, I talk about ways there is a cure. I mean, if we can come up with COVID in a year, we just have to quit just giving money to these places. Now, I respect the Alzheimer's Association, all of these other stuff, but we have to say, wait a minute. I want to know where that dollar goes. You got 100 pennies here. How much does it go to administrative? How much does it go to real research? Now I'm getting off topic, but my book talks about that. I have a sense it has sense.
Oh, I agree.
Right. So we have to start asking those hard questions and do something. So I really believe that we could cure this by starting trending data and all of this information that is being the trend of, if you journal, I would say the takeaway for you, if you've got children, when I first moved, when we first found out Kim, she was doing crazy things. So I went to a divorce attorney. I said, look, what do I do here? He said, well, you need a divorce right there. In some states, attorneys are supposed to ask the question, is this a health issue? They're not asking the questions. They're just wanting to get a divorce. And that's one thing. I said, wait a minute. If you see a family that's fighting and having problems and you went to their wedding and they expect thousands of dollars for this fabulous wedding and they have children and everything, and then all of a sudden you don't hear from them, they're recluse, start asking questions. And I asked them learn how to accept help. That's another really important thing to do. So many people, oh, I don't need any help. You know, there's no shame in saying, you know what, I could use a break today. But anyway, when I went to the attorney, he wanted me to get a divorce, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. We were fighting. She was drinking. You know, she was self-medicating, passing out. I was doing everything to take. So I went to when we were in Little Rock. Basically, the power company I worked for, I had an opportunity to move. The doctors back in 2008 said, "Oh yeah, if you move, that might help." So they needed to become help stand up a data center here in Jackson. So I thought, okay, well, I mean, I don't know what else to do. She was losing the car, North Little Rock, all of these things, just as insane things. She would go up to the school to wait on John and Joseph in elementary school and just sit there and wait out in the car and go inside and say, are they coming? You know, where are they? I mean, it was just horrible. I mean, but the thing is, I just knew God didn't want me to just divorce her, so I pursued it and took her to the doctor. They first prescribed her depression and all. It was always depression. So they give them a round of medications that just turn people into zombies. But she was driving us crazy with the toilet paper. I mean, she flushed like, we had a 2-story house. I mean, she crammed so much toilet paper, must have half a roll. With that, we knew she was upstairs flushing because the water would come down the walls. It was crazy. So I decided to move to Mississippi. And when we got to Mississippi, I went to the church, and your faith is very important. Take a deep breath and get counseling. Go ahead and find a counselor, somebody to talk to, a preacher. Somebody that's been through this might be helpful. You have a lot of resources online like this program right here. But I went to see a counselor, and he was right. He gave me 3 choices. He said, number one, you can go ahead. Your kids are young enough that you can send one, off to family members. And I was like, man, I don't want to break up my family. Number 2, you could put her in a home. Well, I'm $30,000 in debt. How am I going to afford that? Number 3, you can keep doing what you're doing. Well, guess what I did? I kept doing what I'm doing. And if you keep doing what you're doing without really thinking about it, let's fast forward about 5 years. The stress had got me so much overwhelmed, let's just say, that it will build up on you. And eventually, in my book, I talk about this later, but stress will kill you. It will. This disease, 65% of the caregivers die before the people that they're taking care of. And I had an uncle in North Carolina. He was a city manager of Valdosta, Georgia at one time. I mean, they were highfalutin kind of people. And she was just a little bitty thing, and she took care of him, trying to, I don't need any help and that kind of stuff. Well, stress and pneumonia took her out, and he would go around and knock on doors and, people's doors. But so the thing is 5 years, September 23rd, 2016, I was in Little Rock seeing my grandson, because believe me, these things also bring things on like teenage pregnancies and attempted suicides. I'm talking about teenagers, drug addiction. Right. Oh, I've had it all. I'm telling you the truth. I mean, it was a hard thing to write, but I wrote it. That's it. And so on September 16th, it was hot in Little Rock, and now my sisters say, no, Joe, you had a grand mal seizure. That you don't play around with those things. That's what stress will do. It will take you out. And I was so stressed because I was I was living in Kansas, trying to do a job, and basically I gave up my career. But it's not over. I'm still living. I'm still breathing. One of the things I would like to do is take my the technology and the know-how with some of the larger systems I've worked on for the power grid. Take that knowledge, and I'd like to build an international database and start trending, because storage is really cheap. So I talk about that in the book on how I would like to do that. See what else would I'd like to tell you. So yeah, I chose to keep my family intact. And what happened is you're spending so much time taking care of the insanity of it all that you lose sight of your children. Now, what may have been better is taking my youngest and one of the family members would have taken him and raised him. That might have been better. Sometimes you may just have to sacrifice, but really think and pray about it. And your faith is, if you don't have faith, if you don't have, man, I'm sorry. I just have to tell you that faith, hope, and love, and the greatest is love, because when you're in the middle of the night and the questions just keep going, can I have a cigarette? Where's my cigarette? I would like a cigarette. I mean, on and on and on and on. And you've given them the last pill that you know the doctor said you can't give them any more pills to calm them down. You know, and then the next day it may be like a light switch. They'll have a daylight moment. And what you're dealing with earlier in the afternoon was a child where all of a sudden they kind of wake up and they have a daylight moment. And those are moments they just bring you back to reality and say, you know, this is love. I'm so glad that I just didn't give up on this person and put him in a place that I was there. But the first things first is you have to take care of yourself. You have to get exercise. You have to eat right and surround yourself with people that care and love you. You know, that will say, you know what, Joe, you need a break. We're gonna come in here and give you a break. That's very important.
Yes.
You kind of got me fired up with this because I'm very passionate about it.
Well, you know what, Joe, I love that. I love the passion. It's true because, you know, and I haven't really interviewed, and it just so happens that way, not too many men. And actually, I think you're like maybe the third male caregiver, but you're the first one I'm interviewing that had a spouse. I interviewed another guy, but, you know, he was taking care of his father. And then I interviewed someone else, and he took care of his parents. But you're the first guest, really male guest, that took care of his wife. So I'd love to hear it from a male point of view, and I'm sure men out there want to hear it from a man's point of view, and women like to hear things from a man's point of view. Because even though, you know, we're biologically different, there's still, when you take care of a spouse, we have very much many things in common. And I have said on my shows many times, and in my videos, children are the hidden casualties of this war on Alzheimer's and other dementia. They are. And, you know, if we cut off the communication with them, there's going to be, you know, problems. It's hard for us as adults. Can you imagine going through this as a teenager or even like 8 or 9 years old? I mean, when we moved to Mississippi, I didn't mean to cut you. I just want to share this story. I did put this in the book. But when I first moved here to Mississippi, I had to do everything. You know, I had to get and never ever move Christmas during December. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. But I was. It's like being in a war. I think even now, what do they call it? Post. It's traumatic. Like shell shock. Traumatic. Yes. Yeah. I think caregivers suffer. I think people suffer from that. I really feel that. Absolutely.
I'm not trying to find another. I'm not trying to find another crutch or nothing like that. Another one of those. Oh, here's a term for somebody else. No, I really believe that people can suffer from that because
absolutely
the insanity. You never know when you're at work if it's early onset. If that person's going to, well, she got in the car and ran off. She ran off in our. I had a '65 Ranchero, get a hobby too, by the way, and it went missing. And I had to call the sheriff over here and say, hey, you know, somebody got my glorious '65 Rancheros when Obama was doing the. And I wanted it, you know, I wanted to keep it. It was just, and it went missing, and she took it, but I didn't know she took it. The sheriff, we had all ports bulleted out for it and everything. Turned out it was at Mazzio's. And so up the road about 6 miles, we're out in the country. My friend called me and said, I found a ranchero. And I looked at Kim. She had a deer in the headlight look, and I said, do you know anything about this? She said, oh, yeah, I went up there and drove pizza. I said, well, what happened? Well, I got to the pizza place, and I went in to pay for it. And I said, you didn't have any money, did you? She said, no. I said, what happened next? Well, a nice man drove me home. I said, oh, really? Well, what happened next? Well, I made him stop because he touched my knee. And I said, well, I thank the Lord, because you could have been hurt or anything. So that was really something that caused me a lot of anxiety when that happened. So back to the story with John. So that story's in there, and this one here I'm going to tell you real quick. I won't go into all the details I go into it in the book, but moving here, I had to do everything. And I'm so excited because when we moved from Little Rock to here, we had 5 dogs. And I had 7 people at the time, by that time, that moved because my daughter had gotten married and was expecting, and well, it's all in there. And so I came home from work. My daughter was here watching the new baby and all of that kind of thing going on. And I remember coming. It was in February, and I pulled up, so excited. You got a big old smile because he was just loved at his school, his elementary school in Little Rock. But when he moved here, he had nobody. He knew no one. And when I pulled up, he comes out. He said, Dad, I want to show you my grades. And he showed me. I rolled down the window. I looked at him. That's great. Well, here comes. Well, we called her Mother Love. So here comes Mother Love down the stairs. She diddy bops down the stairs, and she just kind of holds her little hands out. It was just kind of cute how she did it. And then she kind of pushed John away and says, where's my cigarettes? I really need mine. And John he just sort of melted. It was like, I can't do anything because she's just dry. She's annoying. Honestly, she was just annoying to everyone. And at that time, she hadn't been on any medications, really, except for what they prescribed in Little Rock, and that was no help. It wasn't until finally I've got a neurologist, and we had to get her in the hospital, and they went through anyway. They ended up throwing us out of the hospital because she kept smoking in the hospital. That's how the neurologist sent her I had to have her committed for 2 weeks. And that's when they got her settled down on the medication. That was a lifesaver. So if you have somebody, this is something I would tell somebody, that if you're early onset or with anybody, and you're living with somebody that's completely driving you nuts, as hard or as difficult it may be, you're going to have to get those people under control because it's a safety hazard. But they could turn the stove on. They could turn the water on, leave it on. They could asphyxiate somehow. There's all kind of things that can happen if you can't. It's like taking care of a child that you never know if they're 50 years old or 8 years old or whatever. It's just bizarre. And it's very expensive. So if you've got different options, and if you think you're going to just put somebody in the home unless pockets or Bill Gates or somebody, then you're just going to have to live the best that you can. And that's another key point. Don't carry guilt. Do the best that you can do. Don't look back, and ask for help. Ask for help. The other important, let your neighbors know. Let your neighbors know. As far as the children go, this is sad, and maybe it's changed. But when I got here, I let the school know about my situation with John, because I would be on the other. Or Joseph was in high school then. My daughter had gotten out of was graduated, like I said. And so the thing is I let the authorities know at the high school. Well, the thing about school is this at the time. It may have changed, but sadly, a lot of these schools, they're real. They're keeping their reputation up, and if you tell people that you're taking care of your wife with early onset with Alzheimer's, it's like they think you've got the plague or something. You know, they don't look at you the same anymore. Like, like, is it contagious? Ooh, am I going to get it? We call it getting it. And it was so sad because, it was just sad because John got ostracized and he didn't do anything. He just wanted to fit in. So he always had kind of a target on him. And it was that way for me there on out. The book talks about raising my children. Now, that doesn't give an excuse or kitchen pass for any child for bad behavior. But the thing is, you're juggling your life. Your life is in your hand. I mean, it's out of control. So you may just have to pull the trigger and have them committed. The other trick, the other thing that I learned from my brother-in-law, my sister taught, when you have somebody committed, be sure on the paperwork, and I'll talk about this too. This is the kind of stuff that's in the book. You're talking about $30,000, $40,000 easy for a week, maybe 2 weeks to do this. But they will do and find a place to do this because once they get them on a regimen of medications, oh my gosh, their life is going to be so much more. It's going to be so much better once they get them lined up. That's what happened. My life changed after that. There's a lot of other things you need to do, but when you sign on there on the paper, initial it right in there in blood or whatever. Dude, I will not pay for any more than what the insurance will do. That saved me. I had to commit her 2 times. The second time, it saved me about $25,000 because they wanted to do. They did all this other stuff without permission, without consulting. So you got to be careful about stuff like that. So I'm getting off track, but the book is full of stuff like that.
Well, that's great, Joe. Our time is up. Thank you so much. Where can people buy your book and get in touch with you if you want them to? Where can people buy your book, Joe?
Well, they can just search for it's on Amazon. If you're a Prime member, you can read it online. I don't know how all this works. I just want to help people. You can read it if you're a membership of Amazon, however all that works. You can do that and just read it. Or you can order it paperback with Kindle. So just Google it. You can find it. And my email is jabrazeal@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, Joe, it was a pleasure having you on. Love your passion, and I want you on again because I'll tell you what, we could discuss like a lot of topics. I mean, a lot from children, grieving, post-traumatic. Yes, there is such a thing, folks. They're starting to realize it now, thank God, that people are starting to realize it. They didn't 15 years ago, but they are now. And I just, recommend to the audience, go on Amazon and look up Living with Thunder, Alzheimer's Untold, A Family's Journey, because it is a great book and you will learn a lot. And if you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it again by subscribing to Chatting with Betsy. It's on your favorite podcast outlet, Spotify, Spreaker, just a couple of them. And please subscribe because it is for free and you will hear valuable information and you will hear from guests who have been through what you're going through now if you're a caregiver, or I have many other guests and a variety of guests with a variety of topics. And I just wanted to tell everybody to be kind. Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast to help other people. It's for you, the audience. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Jeannie and Lillian. And in a world where you could be anything, please be kind. Till we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.